My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Uh, Yesterday was a very auspicious day. Yesterday was Buddha's, birthday. It is also his enlightenment day, and also the day he attained Mahasamadhi. So it's a very auspicious day, and very few that have all three: the birth, the enlightenment, and the death day, are the same coincide on the same day. Uh, I think in the spiritual realm, Buddha is one of the big giants, and he lived, during the period of fourth and fifth BC. So he's way before Christ. So more than 2,000 over years, 2,500 years, and he came from a very princely family. Quite well-to-do, and he was in a royal court. And to some extent, he was kind of sheltered from many of the miseries that people had. And there were instances where he was most always had a good life within the compound of the palace. Everything was looked after, and he knew that he was going to be one day a king. And he wanted to find out what is the state of the kingdom. And he walked around outside the court, and he realized that while within the palace everything looks good, everything is fine, there's a lot of food and nice clothes and shelters and so on. But when he went out, he saw a lot of misery, a lot of people suffering, disease, pain. He also saw a lot of sacrifices, both animal and human sacrifices. And he learned, that the spiritual pursuit is one which is very peaceful, gentle, kind. But when he went out and he saw really a very different state of the world. And the more he, meandered around, he became more and more down in terms of the kind of kingdom he was going to inherit. And that had a major transformation in him, that he says that I don't want to inherit a kingdom that has got so much misery and, intergenerational poverty, sufferings, and to overcome this, people took very draconian approaches of human sacrifice and so on. So it is not a pleasant sight that he didn't quite like it. So he started searching for a more peaceful way of life, and he then gave up his inheritance to become the king, in search of something much more deeper, much more peaceful. And he went around seeing many gurus, many teachers. And while he was doing this, while he was learning from many, he was also exploring, going deeper within himself. And he became very enlightened of how do one manage this life, which continuously has a lot of sufferings, and and over introspection, contemplation, reflection of his own life and the life of people. He then started deepening his thoughts on how do we become liberated from these sufferings. And this is where he started looking at how do one live in harmony with nature, with things around us. And why these sufferings are is because of a few factors. And he started, it's like a scientist trying to explore what is happening, like how a scientist would use the laboratory to do analysis, of using electron microscope or telescope to try to understand the microcosm and the macrocosm. Buddha flipped it instead of instead of telescope and microscope, he started, using the tool of inner scope, going within himself to discover, to liberate from these challenges of life. And then what he decided was he found a philosophy, approach to liberate oneself from what he calls the cycle of life, the samsara, the samsaric living, where you go through a lot of challenges, momentary, pleasures and momentary happiness, and then you slide back to some of the more challenging. So he started thinking about life in a much more deeper way, and he realized that there is a way to decouple oneself from this cycle of life. And this liberation, what he calls nirvana, is a key ultimate goal of every human being. That is the state of self-realization and the state of enlightenment. Enlightenment means the state of not being caught in this, forces of karma or the cycle of life. So slowly, he started understanding the nature of the self and how it interacts with this material world, the nature of the spiritual realm and the nature of the material world. And in all his, engagement, introspection, contemplation, reflection, he started writing about what is the truth, what is reality, like how many great saints and sages have written about the truth. The truth is something unchanging. In Tamil we say Meipuru. What is that which is unchanging? And Mayapuru, that which is continuously changing. So the compilation of Buddha's research, introspection, he then, started documenting this in his books, the Sutras. And the essence of Buddha's teachings has two key philosophies. The first one is that the truth of this material world. And he coins this as the Four Noble Truths. But what are the noble truths? The noble truths are, he says, sufferings are part and parcel of life. Most human beings want only the good things, but they don't want sufferings. But Buddha says that as long as we have a life, we have to undergo sufferings. Yes, both sukha and dukkha are part and parcel of life. It is two faces of the same coin. So the sufferings are part and parcel of life. So when we experience suffering, we need to understand why the suffering is there. So, and then this is the first noble truth is, sufferings are part and parcel of our life. We can't run away from it. The second aspect is that why do we have the sufferings? And here in the second noble truth, he says the sufferings are actually a result of our cravings and our desires. Interesting, our human beings, the cravings never stops. The desires never stops, When somebody earns 2,000 ringgit, you ask him, do you have enough money? He says, not enough. So when they earn $5,000, same person earning 5,000 ringgit, you ask him, do you have enough money? No, not enough. And even though they make $1 million, you ask them, do you have enough? No, not enough. So as our income increases, our desires and cravings also increases. So you see that with 2,000 ringgit, we can buy a Proton. But when our income goes up, we want Mercedes-Benz, we want all the different more expensive stuff, and we don't have enough money. So Buddha says that the human mind has this continuous cravings, desires, and it's relentless. The same thing you see that as we age, the beauty of this is that even the aged ones don't want to stay young. They want to do all the things that when you are youth, in the middle age, as opposed to aging beautifully and gracefully. So holding on to things. Yes, you have to keep the body healthy. Yes, you have to keep the mind healthy. but craving for what we had at the youth level and, at the middle age, and this is what, he says causes a lot of sufferings. But he says that the noble truth, the second noble truth is about sufferings are a result of our cravings and desires. But then he says, how do we then, obviously the disciples ask, okay, great. We understand now we can't run away from sufferings and we know the reasons for these sufferings, right? But how do we, overcome these sufferings? He says that, yes, first thing you have to remember is that sufferings can be ended. It is not that you cannot, yes, as human beings, we have sufferings and cravings, but the greater rule is that we can actually end this suffering. And obviously, the disciples are going to ask, yes, this sounds very easy, but in reality, it's difficult to do, right? Because continuously you have worries about health, worries about family, worries about children, worries about finances, business, a whole range of things. How do we decouple from this? So Buddha then says, yes, there is a way out of this. And he says the way to do this is to practice what he called the Noble Eightfold Path. So there is 8 things that a human being can do to overcome these sufferings in life. So throughout Buddha's teachings and sermons, he talked about this Eightfold Noble Truth. And what are the Eightfold Noble Truth? So you see that the Eightfold Noble Truth is actually nothing to do with external, nothing to do with our body. It is about actually refinement, reformation, and strengthening our mind. What are the Eightfold Noble Truth? He says, we have to cultivate the right view of things. We have to know what the truth is. Sometimes it's a lot of spurious things. And, what seems to be it is, it may not be it. So we really need to introspect deeply, contemplate, reflect, meditate, and including doing research. So we have to have a right perspective of things, and so why something is happening to us, why we are experiencing this, and so on. So this is really important for us to, as I always say, introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation. This is coming from the teachings of Buddha, which is the perspective of how we see things in life. The second aspect he speaks about is the right intention. The intention really is very important. What is it that we want to achieve? Whatever we do, we need to have the right intention. If our intention is not the right intention, it leads to a different outcome. So sometimes people, accumulate wealth, do things for, vanity and in their own self, ego and so on. He says, if you do that, it'll be deflated very fast. So what is our intention of doing things, being in action in this material world? So that intention is really important. The second aspect is actually about when we get our right view and perspective, our thoughts become the right thoughts. So there are times that we have thoughts that are not so great. So we see that, is this useful for us? If it is not useful, leave it out. If it is useful, then take it, integrate it, and try to become more and more refined and enlightened. The right intention, is to find out what is it that we want to achieve in life, right? And part of it is also, at the end of the day, we need to live to outlive everything. So yes, we experience it, we also need to know that this too will pass. Now, when we reform our thoughts and our mind, we see that our speech, he also says our speech is very important, refining our speech. Sometimes what we think immediately comes out if we don't introspect very carefully, and sometimes we hurt people. That's why even Mahan says that, the words that we utter are so important, both for ourselves and the people around us. the kind of vibration that we send. If we say we cannot do it, we will not be able to do it. If we continuously put ourselves down, nobody will be able to lift you up. So the words that we utter to ourselves and to the people around us actually reverberates, within us first, and then the environment we are in. So that, epicenter of everything starts and ends with us. So you see, the speech is very important. Be graceful, be gentle, be kind, right? Once we modulate and moderate and refine our mind and our thoughts, the speech is, more refined. There are times that we get angry. There are times that we want to say things. Buddha and many scriptures say the best thing to do is to be silent. When we don't have anything good to say, the best is to be quiet. The same thing with action. So that translates into what's in our mind, translates into action. So again, we have to have the right action. That means that we have to think through very carefully whether what we do enlightens us, expands our mind, reveals the truth to us, or is it going to diminish our mind, shrink our mind, blunt our intellect, right? So again, he says, think very carefully before we partake anything. So this is the first form about reformation, transformation, refinement of the mind. Then he says that once the action is we've come to the action level, the fifth part is really important. He says, right livelihood. Buddha never said that you have to run away from everything. Yes, you have to look after yourself. You have to earn a decent living. You have to look after your personal self, making sure food, shelter, clothing, looking after your family, and looking after the communities that you live in. He says, having the right livelihood. So he says that part of that is that it's okay to get reward, salary, remuneration for the effort that you put in, but not take corruption, not partake in corruption. In Tamil, we say, Sambalam mattum edukkalam, kimbalam edukkakudadu. That means we are okay with, people paying for the efforts that we put in, as part of our sustenance, but never partake in corruption, because it corrupts the mind, it corrupts every cell in our body. So he says the right livelihood is very important. But the right livelihood leads to that sixth noble truth, which is right livelihood comes with the right effort. We need to be very strategic in putting in the right effort. I know there are sometimes people put in a lot of effort, the outcome is very little, right? So we have to be really smart, right? We have to keep things simple, not complicated. We should not complicate our lives, try to make things simple. We have to, as I say, smart is, simple and strategic in what we do. The M in the smart is actually moral. It has to be guided by a principle of life. So no matter what, we should never compromise our principle. The A in the smart is actually the awareness of our own inner strength, inner resources, right? That agility. When we are aware of our own inner strength, inner resources, we can tap into, we can unlock any resources outside there. As long as we don't tap into our own inner resource, aware of our own inner resource, no matter how much people give us, no matter how much knowledge, we will not be able to progress. So part of that effort is that smart effort, simple and strategic, moral, never compromise our principle, the awareness of our own inner resources, the infinite possibilities and potentiality. R is actually building resilience. We have to be resilient. There are times that we're going to be knocked back. We've got to get up, lick our wounds, proceed, move ahead. Yeah, there are times that we take one step, we are sent back 10 steps backward. It's okay. We keep pushing. That resilience. But resilience is also respecting our own self, that we can do it, and respecting other people. The respect is so important in everything that we do. and particularly respecting, nature-given power within us. When we respect that, we see that nature opens up its knowledge treasure for us, the resources for us. So SMART, T is actually that transcendentality, that ability to transform ourselves, continuously transform ourselves, and the transcendental nature of the self. So this comes, and that is what, having that confidence that, yes, I may be knocked back now, but within me, there is a strength that, like a kite, a kite flies and we have to occasionally pull it back. And the dynamics of the kite is that when we pull back, the structure of the kite bends. You see this, the way the string is put, the structure of the kite bends. The reason why it bends is that when it bends, it picks up the air underneath. So the bending, pulling back the strings, bends the structure, which gives you a nice curvature that captures the air pockets, and that gives the dynamic push for the kite to fly higher, soar higher. In that same way, we see that, there are moments that we have to, put in a lot of effort. There are moments that we're going to be knocked back. There are moments that we're going to be pruned, only to surge further. So that effort is really important, as what Buddha and many great saints speak about. The seventh noble truth is that the right mindfulness. Our mind should be full of that spiritual divinity. There's no pockets of gaps. If you take a bottle of water, when it's full of water, when you shake it, you can't see that movement. Or when you have a small bubble in the water, you see that when you move it, you can see the movement in the water. So mindfulness is actually about that fully immersed mind in that divine, that nirvana state, or the divinity that is powering us. This is why the earlier part, that smart is so important, simple but strategic, right? Moral awareness of the self, awareness of that power within us. You're continuously mindful of that in good health and in when the body is going through challenges. And you see that in itself lifts our spirit. So the right mindfulness, our mind must be fully immersed in the divinity that powers us. He calls it the nirvana state. And the last one is the right concentration, the focus. The focus is not external. The focus is within ourselves, within the internal, our mind, the spiritual realm that powers us. And that concentrated mind is critical in unlocking the power of the human mind. And all these 8 noble truths helps us to divinize every experience in our lives. There are moments that we're going to see, doctor telling us, okay, you have a challenge here, or, whatever difficulties. When you put through this lens, you see that, okay, I am also to experience this. And with the right mindfulness, the right effort, the right concentration, we see that we can attain that transcendentality. So, we transition to a state of, okay, acceptance and awareness and enlightenment. So Buddha taught this 8-fold path on how to, one, become transcendental to this cycle of life, the samsaric, ups and downs, the sukhas and the dukkhas, ultimately leading us to a beautiful path of samatva. Samatva is equanimity, and equanimity at a state of nirvana, which is the blissful state of not being perturbed by anything, but just a silent, mere experience of everything. And that in itself is an enlightened life. And as we do this continuously, daily, we see that we age beautifully and gracefully without any worries, without any challenges. And life is an awesome odyssey, a journey that we experience at every moment of our lives. Every day we wake up, we say, wow, another day to experience this material world, but not be caught by the material world, right? And when we go to sleep, we may or may not wake. Whatever it is, we are back to that samadhi state or the samatva state. In all circumstances, we see that we wake up with the divinity, we live in the divinity, we go to sleep in the divinity. And this is the essence of the nirvana state that Buddha spoke about. And other great saints. And there are some beautiful quotes that Buddha, I really love, which inspired me over the many years. He says that 1,000 candles can be light from a single candle, and the life of candle, the original candle, will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. So that light that we carry, the Paranjoti, that illumination, we can light. When we are inspired, we can inspire others. And the more we give out does not diminish us. Like how sometimes you have 1,000 ringgit in the bank account and you give 500, you left with 500. Not that way. Those are material wealth. But the spiritual wealth he's talking about, the nirvana state, it's just overflowing. The glow. And when we do that, we see that, our thoughts, our speech, our actions become glowing. That's the tejas is there. I love some of the quotes that I place. He says, happiness, many people are searching for happiness. He says that happiness will never come to those who fail to appreciate what they already have. Nature has blessed us with everything, right? Yet people complain, yet people say they are deficient, and as long as we say we are deficient, we will be deficient. As long as we say we cannot do it, we will not be able to do it, right? But if we say, look, I have everything, yeah, I may be, finite, but I have an infinite spirit that enables me to do everything in an infinite way. So in the same thing, he says that how do we conquer this samsaric life? He says, conquer. The biggest challenge that human beings have is that, anger, hatred, jealousy, greed, envy, all those things, right? And even in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that all these causes shrunken of the mind, blunts our intellect. Here, Buddha says beautifully the same thing is that the samsaric life, the turbulence is because of, that we create the sufferings on our own. And to overcome the sufferings, that eightfold path helps us to overcome this challenge, cleanse our mind, brightens our mind, liberates our mind, enlightens our mind, sharpens our intellect, so that we can pursue introspection, contemplation, reflection, and be of service to others. So here, Buddha says beautifully that conquer anger with love. He says, evil with good. There are people that may not be that great, have all kinds of intention. It's okay. Always be gentle, say, never mind, it's okay. He also says that, meanness. There are many people for unnecessary and being very mean to others with their words, their actions, and so on. He says, you treat meanness with generosity, completely opposite, right? And the other aspect is he says that, and there are people that speak all kinds of lies. He says, no, you treat it with truth. So for every challenge that shrunkens the mind, blunts the intellect, he says, you got to do the opposite, right? So, and I always give this example, right? When we are in a nirvana state, everything in this universe has got this nirvana state. Look at the celestial beings. Look at the celestial objects. The sun shines to everyone. The guy that is priest, the saint, the sinner, all equally. So if we imbibe the sun's like quality, it doesn't matter who it is. We shine the tejas in all facet of, to everyone in every facet of our lives. So here Buddha says that the rain falls equally on the just and the unjust. Do not burden your heart with judgments. Never judge anybody. From time to time, I have people, disciples, what do you think about that? And what do you think about this guru? And this? I said, no, I'm not qualified to make any judgment. Everybody that has come has contributed their part. Take the contribution part, right? He says that do not burden your heart with judgments, but rain your kindness equally to everyone. So again, if we want to live a harmonious life, this great master, which we celebrated yesterday, shows us the eightfold path to liberate ourselves from some of the cycles of life. And this eightfold path enables us to unlock the Buddha in us, that enlightened nirvana state in all of us that is embedded. Buddha had the same apparatus as all of us. He put in the effort, he did the introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation. In all his scriptures, he says that discover that nirvana state in all of us. And he showed the simple path that, you don't need to have a PhD or postdoctoral qualification to acquire this, right? The simple practice of transformation, reformation, and refinement of the human mind. If we did that, you will experience the Buddha within yourself. And this is what even Mahan's teachings of I, God is, the philosophy of discovering the creator within all of us. With that, Sandosham.